gentlemen, welcome to the French Connections April 5th edition. It is Wednesday, April 5th, and we are coming to you from the little farmhouse over here in France. My name is Darrell Bradford Smith, and it's great to have everyone here as a listener today on the French Connection. You know, I want to clear something up. I've had a couple of people write me email saying they thought that the picture on the website of the French chateau was my house. I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that's not my house. My house would probably be the barn in the back, but that's okay. I love my little house. It needs its help, and it's kind of sick here and there, but it's over 300 years old, and but certainly I don't live in a chateau. So we changed the picture on the website to reflect a more accurate picture of what my house looks like. So anyway, just a little tidbit of unimportant knowledge for you all. Lots of stuff happening. Of course, we've been battling on all fronts here, including the bad guys in our ranks, and then going further afield and taking on the Zionists as usual. And what we're fighting against right now, we've issued a second fatwa. Now, I hope we're not insulting the Muslim community by doing that, because we don't know anything about the inner workings of the fatwa, and maybe I'm supposed to be an imam to issue one of those or something, which I'm certainly not that. So, but we're using it because I understand it means that someone has used their position in the world to blaspheme. Well, we're not complaining about someone blaspheming of a religion. We're talking about them blaspheming our nation's structure of constitutional republic. And that new fatwa has been issued against Abe Foxman. Abe Foxman is an awful human being running the ADL. He is a troubling man for many, many generations here. This guy's been in this business for 40 years, but he's been involved at the very highest levels for a couple of decades here, and he has recently come out and talked about the New Testament of the Bible being a anti-Semitic document. Well, considering that America was founded on Christian values, which is a fact, not a fallacy, the values of America were Christian, but it was welcoming to all religions. Now, I just spoke to Rabbi David Weiss, and he told me that the Torah should be all Jews' most prominent document, and it is the basis for their religion. And he said Zionism and Zionists don't place the Torah ahead of the Talmud. And so essentially what happens is that the Babylonian Talmud and this tradition of Babylonian structure is the one that becomes prominent in Zionism. And it is a supremacist, racist doctrine. So we have called on this man to be outed. We make it, and we don't mix terms about it, ladies and gentlemen. Zionists in America from this group are criminals. They are destroying the fabric of the country. They're obfuscating and just undermining all the qualities America has ever enjoyed as a nation. And presently, they have taken over our government by their APEC group. They have been working very closely with this guy, the one that just went to jail there? Oh, boy, I can't remember his name. I hate that when that happens. I know it happens to everybody. But he had Muhammad Atta getting free boat trips on his gambling boats, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he acquired this gambling system, this gambling company, through murder. He's been implicated in several murders. Abramoff, ladies and gentlemen, Abramoff. And, this man Foxman has worked with Abramoff and helped him network among the highest levels of our government. In fact, they have worked hand in glove, bottling up America. And you'll notice that Abramoff has worked with this cretin that just had to retire here, Tom DeLay from Texas, who is using the donated money for his campaign for his lawyer fees. So if you were stupid enough to give any money to Tom DeLay's re-election campaign, it is going to his lawyer fees to stop him from being jailed for corruption. We're making a difference here. And we're calling the bad guys who they are, naming names, making claims, backing it up with facts. This is the way to defeat an enemy, ladies and gentlemen, by naming the names and by placing these people on the hot seat and starting to get some teeth in our words here. You know, there are a lot of people around the country and the world who have been waiting a long time for someone or some group to stand up and get some traction on the criminal acts of this group. Well, we're not the only ones out there fighting this good fight, but we're certainly among the largest getting attention for these issues. And we need your support. Of course, 10,000 is not going to do it for us. We need 50. Get the word out. It was interesting. A caller called in Alex Jones's show regarding a Jewish issue, and zip was cut right off. Typical fashion. You know, we don't have to go very far to prove our claims, ladies and gentlemen. You know, they hand it to us on a silver platter every time. And of course, this nitwit, nincompoop Alex Jones is going to be listening to this show later. So hey, Alex, you potato head, because he clearly listens to the programming we put out, and sits there and you know, cowers in the corner because he knows he's on the wrong side of the truth. And we know it too. And we're letting the country know about it. This guy's a bad guy. And they're putting him now, they're trying to let him leave his original audience behind, which is leaving him behind, in fact. His numbers are down in the geez, I've never seen them this low. They're 60% down over his numbers from just 6 weeks ago. So now they're trying to save his reputation by moving him into people who don't know him. Well, it didn't work with Rupert. It's not going to work with you, Jones. You're going down because you're a dirtbag. And all the help you get from Rents, and all the help you get from Rivero, and all the help you get from all these other crooked buggers is not going to help you one bit. You're a bad guy. We all know it now. It's starting to come out, and more and more of us are starting to see what Eric and I pointed out weeks and months ago. So, good news on the horizon. Somebody who doesn't have the ear of the Americans who's trying to shift them in the wrong direction is going to help us all. You know, I've had people say, why are you trying to cause trouble amongst the truth seekers? Well, if he was truly a truth seeker, I wouldn't have a problem with him. But that's not who this guy is. And I know, if I know somebody's doing something like this, like he's been doing, which is to try to send you away from the real culprits, the dancing Israelis and the art students and the 4,000 that didn't go to work and all of the different things that we point out on the show regularly. If he hadn't been pushing you away from Atos boat cruises with Abramoff and the APEC committees and the controlling of the press of these people and receiving his assistance from ABC, which is a Jewish Zionist-owned organization. Look, if he weren't doing those things, I would be in an alliance with the guy. And you take a look at who supports him, and then you start realizing what Eric and I have been trying to point out. This network they've got is enormous. They have a lot of money to spend. They've got billions to throw at this issue. But see, the simple fact is that people realize we're not doing this for money, and we're not doing it for the heck of it. Nobody's behind me. I've got nobody trying to pull my strings other than people trying to manipulate me with emails and whatever else they can send me. But the facts are, when you take a look at the truth rings truer than anything else. It smells sweeter than the lies. When you start finally having it pointed out to you, you go, ooh, okay. So that's what you were talking about, Darrell. That's what you were talking about, Eric. That's what you were talking about, Judicial Biz. That's what you were talking about, Ted Pike. And it starts ringing in your vision. Your vision clears up. Your vision becomes 20/20 again, and you can see clearly who these people are. Alex Jones, the people of the country are seeing who you are. We know what you're doing and who you're working for. You're finished. Pack it up. You might as well go to Israel where you'll be safe. because you're not going to be safe amongst the American public for much longer, my friend, because when the American public finally figures out that you're a criminal, that you've sold out the nation like you've done, they are going to be angry, and they're going to be looking to arrest you and bring you in front of a tribunal. And well, they should. Well, they should. Ladies and gentlemen, this battle is for the constitutional republic, not for a democracy. You don't have a democracy. Well, what we've got in America is despotism, complete, pure, and simple. But, you run around talking about trying to set up democracies in the world. How terrible an idea is that? Democracy, even the ancient Greeks understood, necessarily turned to tyranny. There are no democracies that survive free. They just will not. It's mob rule, ladies and gentlemen. Read about the Kyklos cycles that were discussed by Socrates and Aristotle and many of the other Greek thinkers. And they will explain to you clearly that democracy is a very bad idea, but that's what we're teaching our children. Yeah. Charlotte Isabete had things to say about that in her presentation the other day. And, we're training our children to be robots, automatons, bought and paid for by the elites. Well, this is one guy that will never be bought, never be paid for, and never follow these Zionist criminals. Never. I'll fight them with every last breath, as I know many of you will out there, and I want to thank everybody for trying to spread this word. We need a bigger imprint. We need a bigger footprint. Today we're going to talk with John Decamp. Mr. John Decamp, the Franklin Coverup, a lawyer, ex-state senator from the state of Nebraska, and an authority on corruption in Middle America. And we're going to discuss with John Decamp some of the things that he's been through, he's found out, and what he's doing with himself now. So after this break, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a great show and he's running for office again. So hopefully the next state senator from Nebraska, John Decamp. When we return. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of the French Connections broadcast today. Again, my name is Darrell Bradford Smith, and we are very happy today to have our guest, John Decamp, lawyer, writer, investigator, and ex-state senator of the state of Nebraska, and hopefully soon to be state senator once again. We brought him on today to talk about a few issues, mainly his book and his path to the state senator, and how politics are run in the state of Nebraska, and his hopes for getting back into his office. And we thought that maybe you could swing some of your support behind John Decamp, because he is truly a battler for the truth, and has been one for some time. John, are you with me?
I am indeed.
It's great to have you back, John. You've been through the mill in your life. You've seen Vietnam. You've battled the big guys in one of the most important cases I think America has seen in this century. It didn't get that kind of press play, of course, but if you take a look at the facts around it, it was one of the most important cases I've ever read about in the Franklin Coverup. And ladies and gentlemen, that book is still hot. It's a hot seller still, John. You're still selling a lot of books, aren't you?
Yeah, seem to be. In fact, I ordered, another 10,000 the other day that arrived last week. And so we have books on hand again.
Well, you're going to...
I've never spent one penny trying to promote or advertise the book. I just wrote it more as a self-defense measure, because my best friend and kind of guide through life a little bit, a guy named Bill Colby. You remember Bill is the head of Central Intelligence.
I do indeed, yep.
In fact, he was fired by Mr. Kissinger.
Yep.
Anyway, for exposing some of the things that were wrong that were happening. But anyway, and he was the one that told me, after I was so deeply involved in this, and he was hired by the Senate as an investigator. He had gone into private practice, after he got out of head of the CIA, and he was the one that sat me down and told me, for my own safety and protection, print everything I know, whether anybody ever believes it, reads it, or anything else. The important thing is to put it down so there's no percentage in having to do you in. That only gives you more credibility. He said they'll spend their time trying to destroy your credibility and what you've written, but at least you put it out there so that they have no reason to trying to stop you from saying it. You know what I mean?
Well, you're absolutely right. And, Kay Griggs did the same thing. Kay did an 8-hour talk about her husband's involvement in this conspiracy worldwide. His name was Colonel Griggs. He was a Princeton cap and gounder, and in fact, Bill Colby recommended that she tell all to protect herself, and she did that very thing. And she's still with us. I spoke to her not that long ago, so apparently that's the right way to go with this. Let's discuss for a minute the book, just to give people a little reminder of what it was about. And you being in Oklahoma and having Boys Town there, and having Nebraska. I'm sorry. Boy,
Oklahoma's the one we have war with in.
I better watch out, boy. I'm gonna get a lot of emails for that, John. Actually, Nebraska, and we have a Boys Town there, and that was a hotbed of pedophile activity, wasn't it? This place.
Well, unfortunately, it was, and Boys Town was, hopefully will be in the future, one of the best and greatest child care institutions ever created. At the same time, there was a corruption element allowed to get involved there, and I wrote about it in depth. In fact, my lawsuit was the first one in the United States where somebody stepped forward, 16, 17 years ago, when I sued the Catholic Archdiocese of Omaha and certain priests involved there at Boys Town, and the Archbishop, and that was the first of those lawsuits, believe it or not, against the Catholic Church in the United States. And I've got nothing against the Catholic Church. I was raised about as strict a Catholic little boy as anybody, and so it hurt me to have to do it. But even though I won $1 million judgment in that case, they did let out the Catholic Church as an institution and awarded $1 million against a guy named Larry King, who I don't know if I'll ever collect it. He was in prison, as a result of this whole mess. But anyway, the judge who dismissed or let the church out of it, and mine was the first in the country filed that recited these type of activities, and got so angry at me because he said that was the most horrible thing he'd ever heard of, accusing priests of doing these things with children and so on and so forth, and that I should be condemned for it and so on and so forth. But the case went forward with the other defendants, and I did prove it in a pretty horrible, messy trial. And the shocking thing that came out of Boys Town was that head of Boys Town, the one who had been the head of Boys Town during a lot of the stuff, a guy named Monsignor Hupp, became my strongest supporter, and went on television in a documentary and said, he's like the wife who was the last to know what the husband was doing, or something like that. And he actually, I actually then became his lawyer representing him on some things. So the book did break some new territory and new ground, as did this case.
Well, John, I got to tell you, I went to Catholic boys' school, high school, and I went to school with Scholastic Jesuits, and everybody in the school, all the guys that went to school with me knew that there were certain priests that were a little funny. We knew it, and we knew that they were praying. They were trying to prey on certain other students. We knew this when we were, and this was back in the late '60s, early '70s, and there was no surprises about this. And so, but interestingly enough, this was much larger. This was a very organized and extremely well oiled machine. This kind of firing.
As I pointed out in my book, I was the first one. I had just gotten out of being a senator. In fact, believe it or not, I am the first, last, and only one I think you'll talk to, meet, whatever in your life, who became a senator without ever setting foot in the United States. Did you know that?
How did you do this? Well, let's get into the story.
I'll tell you real quick. I was a combat infantry captain over in Vietnam, and it started out kind of as a joke and a dare one day, and I sent papers in, and the next thing I know, the national publicity I was getting over there and doing what I was doing and trying to run for senator too ended up getting me elected. And so when I finished my tour of duty, I returned here and was a senator then for 16 years, and pretty controversial and pretty effective. So I got out of politics and was practicing law and so on, and then one day, as you know, back in the late 80s and early 90s, we had the collapse of the federal credit union, savings and loan institutions. It was big news. Yeah. One of them was located in a town called Omaha, Nebraska. It was called Franklin, hence I used the title of Franklin Coverup. Anyway, Franklin Credit Union, it was run by a black man named Larry King. And Larry King was kind of prominent. He'd been on the front cover of magazines across the U.S. Great big guy. He was officially identified as the fastest rising black star in the Republican Party. In fact, I remember Larry pretty well in 1984 and 1988, because I was the number one vote getter in the state of Nebraska, selected, to be a delegate to the Republican National Convention. And Larry King was the one who opened both of those conventions, 84 and 88, opened by singing the national anthem, and then he put on one of the biggest parties ever put on at one of the conventions. It was at South Fork Ranch, where they used to film Dallas or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I was at that party, and I would have never guessed there was anything improper going on, but I learned later from some of these children that were involved, and they were flowing in there, and they remember the party real well. After the party, they call it the after party, they had to do certain things with this or that fairly well-known prominent politician or person and so on. But anyway, when this story of the Franklin Credit Union closing first came out, so what? It was happening all over, big deal. But then strange stories started floating down the streets of Omaha and across the state. These kids, young children, well, I call them children, anywhere from 8 to 15 or 16, were boys and girls were telling stories about how, they knew Larry King, and they'd been with Larry King on his private jet, flown to Washington and flown to New York and flown here and there, and the stories got more horrible and sordid and crazy, and about how they were used as drug couriers. They carried drugs because they could go right through security or whatever. Nobody'd ever give them a second thought. And how they particularly were used then also, or they participated in these strange parties providing sexual whatever to this or that prominent person. And as I say, these stories started coming out, and I was one of the first ones. I wasn't a senator anymore. I was out, but I was still pretty prominent. And they'd ask me, and what I thought. And I said, this has to be the biggest tale and fantasy anybody's ever created, because I've never heard of any such thing. And some of the kids were from Boys Town, and I said, and Boys Town is probably the best institution that's ever been created to help children. On and on I went. And I said something else, which got me deeper. Should have kept my mouth shut, maybe. But anyway, I said, if I really believed any of these things, I would be the first one to step forward and demand something be done and try to help these kids. Excuse me, and it wasn't too long after that, I got this letter in the mail and a phone call, and it was from a kid named Paul Bonassi, and he was in jail. He had been picked up on the day the Franklin Credit Union was closed by the federal government, and he had been picked up and put in jail. I think he was 15 or 16 at the time, for supposedly touching another boy on the side of his trousers. And so he wrote and said, if you'd come see me, I could prove to you a bunch of these things, and I wish you'd come talk to me, because I need help. And I thought, what the heck? He's calling my bluff. I'll go see him. So I go to the jail and meet with this kid, Paul Bonassi, and he tells me these strange tales, and tells me about where he hid some things. If I wanted to go get them and look at them, they'd help prove the story. And then he was examined very carefully at the police demand. The police insisted by one of the top psychiatrists in the United States, Dr. Mead, I think was his name, from one of the major universities, Creighton University. And I went and saw that guy, and I said, is this kid just nuts? Should he really be in a mental institution? He says, no. I said, you don't really believe any of this, do you? I said, this is an incredible tale. And he says, I tell you what, Mr. Decamp, I believe it all. He says, you have to understand something. Paul is a multiple personality. He doesn't have to lie. Multiples don't have to lie. They can just change personalities. But he said, I'd like to see it proved separately, independent of him, but I believe what he's telling you. And I thought, oh, God. So one thing led to another, and I went and looked up the stuff that he had talked about, and he kept a diary from about 6 years of age on. Apparently a grandfather or uncle or somebody had taught him to do that, and he did. And recorded in there was every insane thing that you'd find impossible to believe about he was at this place or at that place with this or that, and he'd give a name, and pretty prominent names. Anyway, and then there was one thing I noticed, and I'll quit after I tell you this and listen, but anyway, there was one other thing. There was on a specific day he wrote how he had been on a kidnapping to lure another boy, a paper boy, to lure that boy into a place, and then the boy was seized and disappeared and then taken. And I thought, well, that's easy enough to check out. He's given a date, place, time. This will prove the kid's being. So I go to the newspapers from the city of Des Moines, Iowa, particular date, and I see, well, to my shock, front page, biggest news in the state, the kidnapping of this paper boy named Johnny Gosh.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, shoot. And then he described the boy. So I contacted the boy's parents, Johnny Gosh, and the rest is history. They became some of the strongest people because this kid, Paul, knew things that only you would know if you'd actually been with a boy from birthmarks to so on and so forth. And I won't go into all the Johnny Gosh story, but you know the rest is history. It was his thing.
Well, I understand that the father is one of the suspected people that helped set it up, actually, according to Noreen, at least.
Yeah, you're very much on track. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, to make a long story short, that I just got deeper and deeper and representing involved, and as I say, then eventually I wrote the book. And
well, when here's the interesting thing. What we've been finding out in the early part of this new millennium, one of the main shakers and movers in child sex trade and white slavery is elements within the international Zionist movement here. What we found out is that very, very high-placed people within this group are involved in international pedophilia and child pornography.
Well, now, very important rules I follow is unless I have the absolute proof, I don't say a single thing, because after my book first came out, I had all these threats they were going to sue me, because I named names and was very specific. If you read my book, you know. Well, and if I said it in there, I dared to prove it.
Well, this is my question. I mean, this is what we've been discovering. Now, what I am asking is, have you seen any evidence in your research that there are elements from the group I just mentioned? See, I told you that these are international traders of this sort of thing. Now, had you seen any evidence of that within the Nebraska area or in the Washington D.C. group in your research?
Well, in my research, as you know if you read my book, there were some fairly prominent individuals that I suppose could be said to be within that group.
Yeah.
At the same time, to be honest with you, that was not the main focus of my book. It covers a wide spectrum, and some of the shocking things there are people high in politics and other organizations, things you'd never dreamed. For example, our own CIA had some mind control programs, and I confronted Bill on that. And he basically bowed his head and he said, let me tell you the whole story. He says you have to understand the whole story.
Yeah, this is over in Offutt, right?
Well, Bill Colby was, of course, head of the CIA in Washington. But yes, Offutt and so on and so forth. But he said, let me give you some background, John, so you kind of understand. He says you have to understand the history. He says before you remember, he said during the Korean War, we had these brainwashing things going on, and we really believed, he says. I said, we? Who do you mean? He says, well, the company. And of course, you know what the company is, the CIA official. He said, we really believed in the company that the Red Chinese had developed the ability to have ESP. For example, we believed that they had the ability to brainwash or control or do something with the mind so they could have somebody in front, let's say, standing in front of the President of the United States and know or be able to interpret what he's thinking in his mind. You understand what I'm saying? Extra sensory perception. And, of course, I laughed and said, yeah, right, And,
no, John, I just got a picture of trying to read George Bush's mind.
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
Anyway, he said, I will tell you something. We poured unlimited resources into that whole area, and I'll tell you something else. He said, we were never, ever behind. And I said, well, you didn't have extrasensory perception. He laughed. He said, no. But he said, what we did learn, and what program kind of got started was that children are particularly malleable or susceptible or able to be kind of mind controlled if you start early enough. Mm-hmm. And he says there were a lot of some program within the CIA that had noble goals, honest goals, but some things got out of hand and some improper folk got involved, and he says that's one of the reasons this CIA stuff is coming out on mind control that you're learning on this case.
Did you hear a lot about this guy named Aquino? Aquino was involved in this.
Michael Aquino, he and I had a big debate on it, and on this whole issue. He thought he was not going to have me there, and I showed up, and he backed down, disappeared, and wouldn't debate. Yeah, he's prominent in my book, too.
Yeah, I know, Well, see, now here's the thing. I mean, what we've been finding out, and you made reference to certain individuals in the book from this community, but there is a way in Washington D.C. for certain groups that wish to gain sway or control over politicians and people of prominence.
That was one of the key parts in the book.
That's right.
In other words, how can you control a politician even better than bribery or whatever, a powerful person? You get them in a compromising position and they think they're maybe getting a little secret private sex from a 14 or 15-year-old girl or boy, and in fact they're being recorded and secretly photographed and on and on and on. And you've got them. You literally own them.
And not only that, what we discovered and what we've looked into is that they try to get these people compromised early in their career so that they've got a willing a willing ally throughout their rise. And in fact, many of these people never rise up unless they already have a compromise over their head.
Well, you're quite right. But when the book first came out, I remember there was a pretty good-sized press conference, and lawyers of many of the people named in the book, fairly prominent people, prominent, powerful law firms, said this is the most libelous, slanderous book that's ever been written, and I will be sued and destroyed over this. And I had a press conference immediately thereafter, and I said, I agree. If anybody had said these things about me, I'd be the first one to want to sue them. I said, but remember that rule. The rule of law with respect to this, truth is an absolute defense. And I said I didn't write a sentence or put a name that I didn't feel I have the proof for and to go to court on. And there was one court lawsuit, and that was when John Decamp, sued something called the Great Atlantic Telecast Company out of somewhere on the East Coast around. Anyway, they cover several states, and I sued them because they had one of the characters from the book who had been the former police chief in Omaha, who then ended up as a police chief in a town there in, not Delaware, but North Carolina, maybe, somewhere. Mm-hmm. And, not North Carolina, anyway, ended up as the police chief there, and he'd been on their television saying this is all lies and absolute, and on, and then radio station, or the TV broadcast on the evening news took the position, well, this is all a lie, don't believe it. So I sued them, and I said, hey, you got 3 weeks. Here's a lot of proof. I provided them all kinds of stuff, and I said, either you'll apologize and we'll get some settlement, or we'll go to court. And believe it or not, 3 weeks later, their lawyers called and said, we've done enough checking. We'd like to resolve this. So we did, and they paid me a sum of money, which I'm not allowed to disclose. You know, the old rule, you can't disclose. Anyway.
Well, was it big enough to put an addition on your garage?
He'd do that pretty good and then a little. But anyway, and then they had to apologize. I think it was 3 nights in a row on the evening news to the former senator from Nebraska, blah, blah, blah. So that was the only lawsuit. But, boy, did I get harassed. You know, people trying to get me this way or that way. And anyway.
Well, you know, we've been punching way above our weight, John, and I want to tell you that we're behind your candidacy for the return to the state senate in Nebraska. I want to talk a little bit for the moment about your run here. What seat is it particularly, and your constituency, and all the different details?
Nebraska legislature, Nebraska Senate. And remember, Nebraska is the only state in the United States of America that has one house. In other words, not senators and representatives, just one house, senators. And the only state that is officially, quote, nonpartisan. Only state in the U.S. that has that. Don't know if you knew that.
No.
It's called the unicameral, you know. Anyway, and I'm running in the 30th, 30 district, which is a couple counties that include part of Lincoln and then a county called Gage County. And it's already become controversial as of today.
Well, you know, here's the thing. We're going to put a little press release on our site. We've got tens of thousands of people visiting, and I want them all to know your courage. I want them to know the kind of man that you are, because you know what we need in the country is more people of good character and courage to take a page from your book, and not literally, I mean, but. And stand up and possibly run for some of the offices themselves. People who haven't been caught on film in compromised positions, and somebody that we can possibly take our government back. And I've always believed, John, that we have to take the states back before the Fed will crumble. And so the simple fact is, for Nebraska to begin, returning to some sanity here, it's happening in Wisconsin. 28 communities out of 36, I think, that voted on it, voted that the war was ridiculous. I mean, people are Vermont's waking up, New Hampshire's waking up. In other words, it's happening at state level. And of course, we know that state power has been usurped by the feds over the last 100 years, and we need to reverse these trends if anything's going to happen in the country. And I was wondering what your take is on that.
Well, I give you another strange story. When I was a kid, about 16, I left a Jesuit school, believe it or not, and went hitchhiking. I had lost my family quite a while before that and been in institutions. Anyway, took off hitchhiking and worked my way around the world and ended up at a place called Iran, Persia. And I spent the next 3.5, 4 years there and lived with the people, learned to speak Farsi, Persian, about as well or better than I speak English. And one thing I did learn over there was a lot about the different religions of the world, particularly Muslims and the battles within the Muslim community, the Sunnis and the Shiites, and on and on. In fact, I was so impressed with everything I learned that when I came back, I got my first degree in philosophy of religions of the world.
Yeah.
And kind of interesting. I mention this because I watched it from the very beginning, and it's turning, in just like I thought it would, into a true religious war, and we're in the middle of it. And I'll guarantee you, it's got some problems coming. There's just it's a different world, and this is the first time in the 200 and some year history of this country that we've kind of taken the first strike, so to speak, and gotten the first war we've ever had that I think you could legitimately call a religious war. Every other war we've been involved in has either been defensive, number one, or number two, it has been political or economic issues. But this is the first, quote, religious war that this country's ever been in.
Well, can I bring your attention to a guy named Benjamin Friedman? He was part of the team that went over to Britain in 1916 and 1917 with a guy named Untermeyer and Brandeis at the urgings of Brandeis and Baruch and Morgenthau, and got the British to not surrender and have an armistice with the Germans, and instead got the American government to back and entering the First World War on the side of Britain, and ended up extending that war for another year and a half until Germany was destroyed. And these same people are the ones who, they're Zionists is what they are, and they've actually, according to Mr. Friedman, who was there at the signing of the Balfour documents, he came clean in 1961 and said that the biggest threat to America is the Zionist conspiracy at the very top. Now, what we understand on the French Connection is that these people are in control of our Federal Reserve System, which was designed and operated by these people, but they also control the press, the media. They've worked their way into our highest levels of our universities, and they are working toward this Talmudic Babylonian tradition that is, to say the least, not in parallel with our Christian beliefs. I mean, it's something from some other planet. I mean, and we've got some problems here, and most Americans don't realize just how sold out our country has become to these people.
I'll be honest with you, I've heard a lot of these things. I don't have, from my own knowledge, experience, that in-depth knowledge like you're talking about there, so I can't say yes or no. I can say it's something I'm certainly looking at.
Well, take a listen on the French Connection's website at IamTheWitness.com. There's a Benjamin Friedman, open up the file on Friedman. We've got his actual words in his own voice at the Willard Hotel in New York City in 1961, where he talks about his participation in fomenting the war, Second World War, and how they did it, why they did it, how they financed it, who did it, and when you're done listening to Ben Friedman, if you've got any hair that's not curled on your head, you then take a look at some of the things that Untermeyer said to his Jewish audience in New York about getting Germany under thumb, and how all of these machinations in our last century were designed by these people, and you're going to hear it from the horse's mouth, John. It's powerful information in the extreme.
I will certainly listen, and I'll keep an open and objective mind, and I'm always ready to learn more about this or that.
Well, you know, it'll help you, because I understand, since you do have knowledge of Iran and the peoples of Iran. By and large, what I've understood throughout my life, living in France, there is a 10% Arab community here.
Yeah, it's about 11 or 12, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a good-sized community, and what I've always known is that their hospitality is exceptional, and maybe you can mirror this through your experience. I'm certain that you always enjoyed great hospitality from the Iranian people when you were visiting.
Well, remember, I was just a young boy, completely on my own, about 16 years old, and it was quite a learning experience, and I got taken under the wings of a kid who had been in school in Switzerland and had returned home. He was quite a bit older, 6, 8 years older than me. And he found me a job with this American company. Americans were just coming back into Persia then and helping them develop bases. The Shah had just been reinstalled and reinstated, so it was quite a learning experience, and more than a tad educational from the standpoint of religions and the way the religions of the world think and act and whatever. So,
well, you know something, I've been in touch today earlier with somebody from the company as well, Ray McGovern. And Ray and I talk regularly, and he's been sharing many of the same kinds of things I just explained to you about what's going on, and it's going to take a concerted effort of good people to stand up and say enough's enough. And I think we're starting to get some traction, John, and I got to tell you that I'm very happy that you acquiesced to this. We're going to put information about your campaign, as well as the information about the book back on the site, so people can get rid of that 10,000 new copies you just printed.
Okay, can I give you a phone number, and you call my little gal at the office?
Okay.
And she will give you all the information, and then you can get it direct from her, okay?
All right, please do.
Her number, do you need an 800 number or a regular number? What do you want?
Doesn't matter.
402-477
Yeah.
3974. Her name is Stacy. Just tell her you talked to me. I was on a program, and she used to give you all the information. Is that okay?
It's wonderful, John. You know something? I'm very proud to have had you on the show again. And this is your third visit to the French Connection.
Yeah. Let's do it again. I got to run right now.
Well, good luck with your election, and when you win, I'm going to call you up and congratulate you, my friend.
Very got to understand, I'm pretty controversial here in Nebraska. So.
Well, you know something, all the better, my friend, because I got news for you. I think America's ready for a cleaning of the house. So maybe that's just a ticket for you.
I wonder. Okay, we'll talk to you later. You got her number.
You betcha, John. Thank you so much.
Be good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Ladies and gentlemen, that's John Decamp, ex-state senator in the state of Nebraska, Army veteran, Vietnam captain, world traveler, bi and trilinguist, fighter for the truth, exposer of criminals. So many of the things that have happened in the country, John has been there to document. And it's great that I had the opportunity to actually send him down a new path of information that we've been developing on the French Connection. But John's book, The Franklin Coverup, is a powerful read with very, very high-level names listed there. And as you heard him say, the people will not debate the authenticity and the accuracy of those claims at the point of lawsuit, and he's won them as a result of them trying to deny their involvement. And the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the pedophile ring in America does have Zionist elements. We've documented that on the French Connection, and we are going to continue to do that and develop this story further. There is so much, beyond this, just what you think is going on in the country. There is sickness in America, and we're going to try to root it out and get our constitutional republic back. And we're going to do it one convert at a time, one show at a time, one bit of information at a time. This is Daryl Bradford Smith saying thank you very much for listening to today's show. We look forward to having lots more. Probably you're going to be having Rabbi Dovi Weiss from New Turakarta sometime soon, and look forward to some other things this week too. I've got some calls out to people that have said they want to get on the air with me, but they're very busy schedules, so I'm going to have to work around their schedules to get them on, but we'll do it. So hang in there, and please keep fighting and keep recruiting, and until the next time, this is Daryl Bradford Smith saying be well.